Welcome back to Retire Southern, where we share authentic experiences and meaningful connections from the heart of the American South. Our message is simple. Life is too short to wait for someday. So don't wait for retirement to start living. I'm your host, James Lewis. Today's guest is bringing something fresh, briny, and straight out of Charleston's waters. He's the founder of Charleston Oyster Farm, a local champion of sustainable aquaculture, and the man behind some of the perkiest sea cups you'll ever slurp on. He's on a mission to preserve the Lowcountry's oyster heritage while serving up an authentic taste of the holy city. Tom Bierce, welcome to the Retire Southern podcast.
Thank you.
Man,
happy to be here.
I love being on the farm, man. Getting a good tour, being out on the water, smelling the smells.
Yeah, nice
sights.
Cooler weather. I'm
cool.
Digging it.
Yeah. So you're out this morning, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. You're harvesting and grading, or harvesting today?
Both. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're gonna flip some cages, air dry them as well. So we got multiple tasks going on.
You got a lot of
today.
Activities going on. So I definitely want to get into the process and everything behind it because I find it fascinating. But let's start with a little bit of your background. Tell us a little bit about your journey, what brought you to Charleston, and how this all started for you.
Oh, yeah. Coming to Charleston and finding myself here and also finding my way towards oysters kind of all happened in the same clip. I was lucky enough to do a semester at sea my junior year of high school. It was on a traditionally rigged staysail schooner Westward. I was, I think, 14 other students from all over the country, including my twin brother. We sailed everywhere from as far south as Venezuela to Halifax.
Wow.
6,000 nautical miles in a semester. We were taking, we got high school credits, so it was navigation, seamanship was one of the classes, applied mathematics, marine science, maritime history and maritime English, all that stuff. And every port we visited, we would, get a lesson, and it was really cool. But one of the guys on board, Pete Malinowski, he was born and raised on his parents' oyster farm in Fishers Island, New York. And he kind of got me interested in it, and I've always liked the marine science classes when I was on board. And it wasn't on our planned itinerary to visit Pete's family's farm.
Right.
But there was a squall, or some heavy weather out in the Atlantic, and we had to deviate from our itinerary, and we went and took shelter over on Fishers Island and got to hang out on the oyster farm for a few days while the storm passed. And that was my first experience with oysters and oyster farming. I'd never...
Wow.
Yeah.
First of all, I'm terrible at geography. So Halifax, is that...
Nova Scotia.
That's Canada, right?
Yeah.
So from Canada to Venezuela, 6,000
Yeah, we actually
nautical
started in the U.S. Virgin Islands and went south all the way down to Venezuela, and then sailed up the East Coast. Charleston was one of our stops. That was my first time to Charleston, actually.
Really?
Was sailing on that ship through the Charleston jetties. That was in 2005.
2005.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to take it even one step further back. This sounds like an amazing opportunity to do in high school. Where did you grow up?
I'm from Ohio originally.
Why is everybody from Ohio that I talked to? Actually, the other day, I was talking with Dave Eccles, who is the GM for the Charleston River Dogs. He's also from Ohio. Did you know that?
No, I didn't.
Yeah. Anyway, so you grew up in Ohio. Ohio is very inland.
Well,
so how did you get this semester at sea?
But actually, it started when I was really young. My parents took me to see the Tall Ships Festival in Cleveland Harbor.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, and I grew up sailing in lakes, and had some family in New Jersey. We'd sail catamarans. I always loved sailing, and I found out that you can take a semester at sea on one of those big sailboats, and I figured out how to apply, and I got accepted, and yeah, I can tell you senior year was pretty dull after that.
I bet. So literally a squall is what brought you to Fisher Island, which brought you to the oyster farm, which was your first.
It was actually a nor'easter. Yeah, It's
there
funny how where the wind takes you sometimes,
That's hilarious. So from that, you end up at Coastal Carolina University?
Yep. Okay. Studied marine science. I got my degree in marine science and coastal geology from Coastal Carolina. And my twin brother, he went to College of Charleston. So I found myself coming down here pretty much every weekend with my buddies to do some surfing out on Folly Beach. Mm-hmm. And I always really liked it here. But Peter, my brother, and I, we had to create a little distance after growing up together, being womb mates, and then that semester you couldn't get more than 90 feet away from anybody for 4 months.
Yeah.
So, we were kind of butted heads back then, but after one semester away, we kind of realized we were best friends. So graduated, moved down here, and was working as a commercial diver for a little while.
Right. I saw that.
Dock companies.
Building docks.
Yep.
Marine construction.
Yep. I got my 100-ton master's captain's license, commercial diving, and always had the oyster farm kind of in the back of my mind, and no one's really doing it in South Carolina. There was only one guy, Frank Roberts, and another farm to speak of in South Carolina, and I was the third one, and the first one to have to go through all the permitting hurdles. That's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
Took 5 years to get the permits.
Okay. Let's start into the evolution of Charleston Oyster Farm. When did you actually start the process of getting this whole operation going? How you said 10 years ago, right?
Yeah, so 2014 I started the LLC.
Okay.
I was doing some marine construction type things, diving. I had my own dive company.
And you were giving tours, right? I mean, you're doing like eco tours.
Yeah,
and stuff
that was kind of before the dock building and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, that's when I first moved to Charleston. I was living on Folly Beach, and there was a company that was hiring for some paddleboard tours, and that was fun, close job. And for the permitting, you have to have a LLC that was in business for at least a year before you can apply. So I was kind of, that was the first step. And, I think diving and captaining were two good qualifications to start. And, you have to have an LLC before an oyster farm. I figured that was a good venture to start into. So I still do a lot of diving, and I did the whole farm myself. It's a lot of work. They're 6-foot helical screws that you drive into the seabed. So you kind of have to have a special skill set to start this stuff,
So you're literally doing underwater construction, basically.
Yeah.
Wow. So what permitting board are you going through? Like, what's the municipality that governs all that?
So Department of Natural Resources,
so
Army Corps of Engineers, and Office of Coastal Resource Management.
So no red tape to cut through.
Oh, no, none. Yeah, so
I can't even imagine trying to get something pushed through the Corps of Engineers.
So I had two different permits, one for bottom cages and one for floating cages, because I knew the floating cages were going to take longer. I figured I could get the bottom cages permitted, start the seed, and before long, the floating cages would be permitted, and I'd be able to transfer use just that as a jump off point, But 5 years later, I finally got the permits for the floaters. So the first 5 years I was operating solely out of what was supposed to originally just be a little nursery site and wet storage site closer to the boat landing, which we still use, but the bottom cages are much, much more time consuming and not as effective. They're kind of down in the mud, and to air dry them to keep once a week. You have to pull them up onto the boat and take them back to shore, and then take them back the next day. With the floating cages, you just flip them over, and the pontoons hold them up.
Right.
And that's an important process in the summertime. That's what keeps our singles single. Otherwise, you'll have all the wild oyster spat that's in the water landing on your oysters and your cages, and before long you have a whole bag full of clusters, and those aren't nearly as
efficient.
Yeah, well, they're not, and you can't get as much of a price point for them. 40-pound bushel of
so they cost you more, and you get less.
Yeah, exactly.
And
it's hard on the gear too.
So after going through the permitting process, you have the nursery site. You started with the bottom cages, and then applied for the permitting for the floating cages.
Yeah, at the same time.
So you have the nursery site. When you're going through the permitting process, does that include approving the area that you're going to lease to farm on? Because your lease is out on Green Creek, correct? So is getting that established part of the permitting process, or is that a separate process?
Yeah, that is part of the permitting process, the footprint. So there's my culture permit is where I have the rights to harvest the wild oysters, but I have the exclusive rights to harvest that area. But when you have a culture lease like that, you're also responsible for planting it annual husbandry requirements. It's based on the number of acres of natural resource you have within that lease. And the way they determine that is at low tide, they'll fly over with a plane equipped with LiDAR, and the mud returns a different signature than the reef, so they kind of quantify acreage. And based on the acreage, you're required to plant a certain number of bushels back out on the shore. There's a number of ways you can get bushel credits. I think we're only required to plant like 75 bushels, but we're already probably at close to 1,000 bushel credits.
Okay.
And that's mostly from green shell. It's some of the dead oysters, single oysters that did get some spat on them.
Mm-hmm.
1 bushel of those is worth 9 bushel credits because there's live oyster spat on them already. Oh. So they have a huge leg up from just throwing recycled dead, nothing on it, like cluster shell.
Just shell.
Yeah. So that lease is, only intertidal oysters. So the mariculture is utilizing area of the water column that isn't being utilized by anything else. So you apply for your footprint, and if I didn't have that culture lease, I would probably have to get permission from another leaseholder. I think you might be able to. I think you're allowed to apply for areas inside state grounds too, where other commercial harvesters can pick the wild oysters. But since it's not in the same area as where the natural oysters grow, it's not really, affecting. It's not like you're taking away anything,
Yeah. So other than the bureaucracy that you have to cut through, the red tape, the core DNR, but then I imagine you also do you get any pushback from any local fishermen? Just like this is my creek.
No.
No one ever take a shot at you.
No. The fishermen, crabbers, everybody pretty much is on board with it. Okay. The farm is it's a nursery for a lot of juvenile fish, shrimp, crabs. We've found spiny lobster,
really
big and small, in the cages.
Wow.
Octopus, every fish you can think of. Everything likes hiding out in those things, and the fishermen they don't mind it either when they're hanging. The dolphins like it too. When we're flipping cages up, they're chowing down.
They're happy.
Yeah.
So Charleston's known for its seafood, but what makes oysters so special here in this area specifically?
Well, so they are all the same species up and down the East Coast, from the Gulf of Mexico up to Canada.
Okay.
It's been the same species. They take on the flavor of the water they're grown in, and the geology, all the different factors, or what drives the flavor in this area. Just with the tidal forces we have, and the food availability and the clean water, it's just a recipe for some special oysters,
really
especially
oysters.
The Folly Creek. And people have always loved the wild oysters that come out of the Folly River. They've always been delicious, and this is the Stono River. We're all in that same area that is just known for having really tasty oysters. When we're growing them in mariculture, it's the same beautiful water, and we just can grow them a little cleaner, that just, it's something you can't get from the wild. Mariculture, maricultured oysters are it's the same species, but they're a lot different.
That's a good segue into the process. So can you walk us through the process, what it takes to farm an oyster, literally from seed to getting it on the truck and serving it up? Someone shucking it at a restaurant. Yeah,
so it starts out as in the hatchery. There's one hatchery in South Carolina, Ladies Island, Frank Roberts and Julie Davis.
Okay.
So what they do is they'll take big broodstock oysters like those jumbos I showed you, and they need to be replicated. This needs to be replicated several times. You don't know what's a male and a female until they're actually spawning. So they'll have several broodstock oysters in little dishes. See, like Pyrex dishes you can see through, and they induce spawning by raising the temperature of the water up to 70 degrees. That's the point when oysters start to spawn.
Okay.
And then they introduce a little bit of sperm or egg into each dish, and the oysters, once they filter that and they sense it, that's their cue to start spawning. And the males will open their shells and release a steady stream of sperm, and the females flap their shell to release the eggs. So that's how you note what's a male and a female. And so then you know what the sex is, and then once they've released all their gametes, you pull the parent oyster out, and then you do a ploidy test to determine the number of sets of chromosomes, if it's diploid, triploid, or tetraploid, 3 sets, 2 sets, 3 sets, or 4 sets of chromosomes, and you want to cross a diploid with a tetraploid, and that yields a triploid oyster.
Okay.
This all happens naturally. Mostly you're getting diploids, but there's triploids and tetraploids in the wild as well. And they can actually change sex in the wild as well. Okay. But you want the triploids because they're essentially mule oysters. They don't reproduce, which is one important thing that we need out of these oysters to be able to harvest year-round. One reason you're not harvesting the wild oysters in the summertime is because they're spawning.
Right.
They use all their winter fat stores to produce gametes, so their meat quality is not as good.
Okay.
You don't want to really eat an oyster when it's doing that. So these ones you don't have to worry about, and since they're not having to worry about reproduction, they spend all their energy on just growing. So they grow faster. So triploids.
So you only buy triploid seed then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. If I want diploids, I can catch wild diploids. But it's kind of tough until they change the regulations to be able to harvest diploids in the summertime as well. Because after 1 year, they're not going to be mature enough to be spawning anyway.
Right.
So I think they are going to change, allow summer harvested diploids, because we're not holding them for 2 years, long enough for them to be spawning anyway. You just can't determine that when you're harvesting from the wild. Plus, the wild oysters, they're rising and falling. They get exposed at low tide, so the sun will be baking them. The summer sun bakes them. It gets way hotter than the ambient temperature of the water that they're in the creek. Mm-hmm. So, for those 2 reasons, the fact that you could have spawning oysters and the fact that they're exposed twice daily to the hot air temperatures, the floating cages, we're growing diploid oysters that don't reproduce, and with the floating cages, we can allow them to stay submerged 24/7. And the regulation is they have to stay down for 14 consecutive days. So we have subtidal, non-reproductive oysters.
Nice.
So yeah, those are the keys.
So you get the seed. Does the seed go in the nursery, or does it go immediately in the floating cages, or is there a transition from nursery to farm?
I guess I have to backtrack a little bit. So
Sure.
Once they determine the parent oysters they want to mix to produce the triploids, they'll dump them into a closed loop system that's drawn in raw seawater and running it through particulate filters and also UV filters to just make it really clean seawater. And then it's just larvae, and they grow their own algae so it's oyster larvae and food with a sperm and egg mixes in the water. And that's the same thing that happens in the creeks. The oysters fertilize, and then they're planktonic for about 28 days, about a lunar cycle. They're just swimming around, planktonic, just going with the tides. And once they get to the point where they're ready to latch onto something, they have this little sticky appendage where they'll swim down in the natural setting. They'll swim down to the oyster reef and attach. You can have 100 oysters on the back of one oyster shell, and that's what makes them cluster.
Right.
But in the hatchery, they introduce a really fine micron screen with individual tiny pieces of shell. Call it microculture. That's only large enough for one oyster larva to settle onto. So since the substrate is so small, you end up with millions and millions of seed oysters, and they quickly outpace the size of the thing that they latched onto, so it basically disappears. So that's how you get the seed oysters, and then we get them at about 6 millimeter. Once they come out of from the hatchery, they go to the nursery and they grow them up a little bit, and then we can take them. Because when they're really small, it takes a lot more infrastructure, pumps, and the sieves are so small that you have to clean them constantly. And it's just, you have to have a special setup for that. Okay. It's a lot.
Okay, so then take me from there. Once you get the seed.
Yeah, then we stock them in bags about 15,000 per bag.
Okay.
And we'll put them out for a week, shake them every couple of days to get the mud out of them, because there's a lot more silt in the creeks, and in those fine mesh bags, they're like, it's like window screen size mesh that they're in 15,000 per bag. And so after a week, we come back and we sieve them. When they're really small, we use hand sieves, and as they get bigger, we can start using the tumbler, and I'll get into that.
Sure.
When they're really small, they kind of stick to everything. They're like suction cups. They're a lot harder to work with. Even though it's like not much volume, like you can have 500,000 oysters in the side, and all fit into a cooler, and we got about 500,000 oysters in the beginning of April, and they literally take up the entire farm now. Like there's tons, literally thousands of pounds of oysters. That's how fast. It's exponential, the growth. Yeah. So when you stock them at 15,000 per bag, quickly they're gonna. It's like Jiffy Pop, as Frank Roberts. That's his analogy. You gotta. Jiffy Pop. Yeah, you can't let them get too over full. So that's one of the things that grading. If you bring back 10 cages worth of seed, you're gonna at least split them in half. So you're gonna be putting back twice as many cages, and then the next week you're putting back 40. Next week 80, and quickly you're just the farm fills up.
So to take a step from there, you have how many total cages in the water?
330.
330 cages.
Yeah.
So it's just this constant, pardon the pun, churn.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you're constantly flipping cages, grading oysters, pulling oysters out of the water, bringing them back here to tumble them. Can you talk about why you tumble the oysters and what that does?
Yeah, so that tumbling is a really important part of the process, because when they're growing at rates that fast, you have some that are growing a little bit faster than others. It's like a bell curve. You're going to have some faster growers out front, the middle of the crop, and then you have some stragglers, that take up to 2 years to get to a marketable size. So the grader or the sieves, depending on the size. As you get to the grader, it's more like you go from weekly grading of everything to it takes about a month to get back to the beginning. So as they get bigger, you can kind of the intervals change. The grading makes sure the larger oysters in the bag don't outcompete the smaller oysters, which will stunt them, and you'll have more that take longer.
Right.
So the more vigilant you are, the quicker you'll get them out the door.
And you tumble them because you need to chip them, right? And as you tumble them and chip them, you said that's what gives the oysters the cup. The cup.
Yeah. So in the wild, the oysters, they call them blades, because they just grow long, skinny, not much depth. They're pretty flat. But when you're tumbling them from the time they're really small up until they're market size, every time you chip that really fine lip, as we call it, they cup up a little bit. So every time you chip it, it creates that curve.
Right.
And the more you chip it, the deeper it's going to get. There's some farms out on the West Coast where we're not able to get permitted above 18 inches above the seabed, but they have a line that goes down. Picture a long line, and then a couple oyster bags dangling from it, and then on the bottom you have a float. So every time the tide comes in, it flips the oysters over, and then when the tide goes out, it flips them back. So the tide action flips them twice a day. So those oysters, they look like golf balls. They're just so round and deep. So the more you chip it, the deeper the cup's going to be.
So how long, generally speaking, does it take from a seedling to market? Is that a 6-month cycle, a year cycle? I know you said it could take longer, it could take shorter, but what's the average?
About a year is what the bulk of the crop is ready.
But in the meantime, you're flipping cages weekly, 330 cages.
Yeah.
Weekly, and you're flipping them because you want the oysters to get some air exposure so they don't get the spat on them, so they're cleaner.
Yeah.
Because if they're cleaner, then it's less labor for you.
Exactly. So you do it every 7 days, because you're going to have oysters that they're landing on them all the time.
Right.
Like constantly. In a 7-day period, if you air dry them well enough, anything that has landed on that oyster within the last 7 days is going to die. And barnacles too. I mean, sometimes you'll have some barnacles, but this year we pretty much have 0 spat. But it's a fine balance. You're trying to keep some oysters alive and kill others.
Yep.
So it's
You're playing
tricky.
oyster god.
Yeah, but if the spat are allowed to establish themselves, it only takes 1 week. If you miss it 1 week, you're gonna have spat on all your oysters, and you're gonna have to. The only way to get them off after that is to physically chip them off with a hammer.
Okay.
And last year, I think I would say that was 50% of my labor cost was chipping spat.
oysters.
Yeah.
So when an oyster is market ready or market size, what you call a market, before you harvest it, it has to stay in the water for a certain period of time, right? Mm-hmm. So it's not like, okay, this one's ready to go to market. There's an area that you keep. You have an app on your phone that shows which cages are markets and what's not. So talk about from market to table. Like, how long do they have to sit in the water? What are the rules around that?
Yeah, so we're still in summertime harvest regulations, and that ends October 1st. But during this time, we have a lot stricter set of rules we have to adhere to. And basically, we have to harvest before 10 a.m., and we have to get the oysters below 50 degrees within 2 hours.
Right.
And those oysters have to have been submerged for a minimum of 14 days.
Okay.
So what we're doing now, we did harvest some stuff this morning.
Yes.
That has already met the 14-day requirements. But we also brought back some stuff to send through the grater, and the stuff that it's like a big tube that has different sets of holes. 2 sets. So a smaller set at the beginning, and then a second larger set, and then everything that comes out the end. So you get 3 grades out of it. Everything that comes out the end, we take a closer look at, hand sort out the bigger ones. Those ones get counted out into 100-count bags and then stocked in a special site on the farm. We put it in the app and note what day. It'll be 2 weeks from that day that it's ready.
The market.
Yep. And then we bring it back here, and they go from here. They go straight to the restaurant. So within hours of coming out of the water, you could be eating a oyster that came out of the water 4 hours.
Yeah, and I think that's important to note. So how many pounds of oysters are in the back of your van right now?
There's 2,000 oysters in there.
2,000
right now. I'm not
oysters.
sure of poundage.
Okay, well, let's just go with the numbers then. You have 2,000 oysters back there. Where are those going today? Just as an example.
Chubby Fish, Harlow, Bowens, and Raw Lab.
Raw
today.
Lab. Good.
And Pearl. Did I say Pearls?
No, you did not, but let's throw them in
Pearls
there.
too. Yeah,
Pearls.
they're going too.
Well, I know where I'm going to be. Today and tomorrow. I'm actually going to do dinner with Kevin at Raw Lab tomorrow night, so I'm excited about that. So that's fascinating. You're literally going from the marsh in the van, cool it down, and you're making the deliveries, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you're showing
we
up
do
with
everything.
Bags of oysters.
Start to finish.
One of the things that you brought up earlier before we started recording, when you were giving me a tour, was mortality. How many oysters do you lose in a season just to they die or they don't make it?
All right. So last year we didn't have hardly any mortality.
Really?
Nothing died.
Huh.
Yeah, we had great looking oysters, but they caught some spat. Mm-hmm. All right. So we went a little more heavy on the air drying this year. A little bit. Increase the temperature threshold where we're going to try to get to 24 hours, and just a little bit more aggressive on the air drying. Mm-hmm. We did see some mortality. It could have been from air drying, but I also think there's some other factors. I had some guys that weren't quite up to speed. One really important thing when you're flipping the cages is if you just flip it over and the cage turns over really slowly, all the oysters are going to be stuck in one side of the bag. Mm-hmm. And if you just leave them like that, a lot of them are going to suffocate. That's the quickest and fastest way to kill a bunch of oysters. I noticed a lot of that some of the bags weren't shaken out properly.
So how do you avoid that?
You shake the cage so that they're flat all the way across and spread out along the bottom. Okay. I know that was a huge factor. Mm-hmm. That killed a lot of oysters, was somebody just not taking the time to shake them out.
Shake them out the right way.
And I'm not blaming anybody, but this year I figured it's a lot easier if we have some mortality from overexposure. That's a lot easier way to kill some oysters, because you're gonna kill some when you're chipping spat, like just hammering them. You're gonna kill oysters, and you're putting work into that. It's kind of a trade-off, you know. You don't want to see spat on the oysters. That was just really eats into the profit.
Yeah.
So I think we're in a really good spot. Maybe we'll dial it back a little bit. We're just still finding it's so many factors involved. It's kind of an art in that regard. There's so many different ways you can manage your farm, you know.
So locally, you're micro-sourced locally, anywhere from as close as, is it Bowen's Island?
Yeah.
As close as Bowen's Island out, you said, to Isle of Palms? And that's about your footprint?
Yeah.
How many oysters are you selling a year on average?
Well, let's see. The first couple of years, I mean, we just got the main grow out site permitted a few years ago, and we had to build it out. And last year was the first year we've been like full scale, and I think we did about 300,000 or 400,000 last year. This year, hopefully, do a few more.
Yeah. About 500,000 oysters a year.
Yeah.
That's what Tom Bierce wants.
Yeah.
Dude, that's
shooting
crazy.
for 500,000 this year. We got 600,000 seed.
So one of your varieties is the Perky Sea Cup, which is a great name. How did you come up with that one?
Oh, my sister-in-law came up with that one, actually. She's the queen of puns. And, Perky Seas is actually a term to describe maritime conditions when the waves are, when it's really choppy. You know, your squared seas, when the period is the same as the height. There's Perky Seas, and she thought that would be a good name for an oyster.
What other varieties of oysters do you have?
We have petites. Those are just a little smaller, the slower growers. Yeah, it's not like we're going to harvest a younger oyster that's small. Those petites, those are older, slower growers, so they still have a really thick shell. You'd think the older it is, the bigger it is, but that's not always necessarily the case. The petites are the really slow growers. They're older, but they're smaller.
So are those the mosquito fleet petites?
Yes.
So can you explain what the mosquito fleet is and where that came from?
Well, we're operating out of Backman Seafood. They're a Gullah Geechee fishing family. They have had up to 6 shrimp boats here at one time, 60 employees, and the mosquito fleet, they got named by some lady out on the Battery.
Yeah, no, I know there's some like historical rationale to it. It was like their fishing group, you know, like their fleet of Gullah Geechee fishermen.
Yeah, she thought they looked like a fleet of mosquitoes, and the name kind of stuck. I'm trying to think of some aristocrat lady on off the Battery watching them sail around in the harbor, and the name stuck. And then we have the jumbos.
Yeah, the jumbos. You were showing me outside 20. God, what was it?
25 count is the same size as the
25 count.
100 count. Yeah.
And they're huge.
Yeah, they're big. And then of course the wild clusters. We harvest those too.
What role do oysters play in the ecosystem beyond just being delicious? Why are they important to the environment here?
Well, several things. They're important as habitat. They're keystone species. Healthy oyster reef usually indicates healthy habitat for other fish. So a good analogy is there's no forest without the trees. Oysters are serving the same. They are the forest.
Yeah.
They're the substrate. They're the structure around here. Everything else is really sand and mud, and that's so it's important in a geological sense. Like this whole area would look completely different without the oysters holding the riverbanks in place. If it was just sand and mud with these tides, if the oyster didn't exist as a species, who knows what the Lowcountry would look like?
Right.
And that's kind of another interesting point about this area is the oysters. It's the same species grown on the East Coast, up and down the East Coast, and they just adapt to the geology and the tidal influences. So you'll have some subtidal oysters growing in sandy bottoms, some intertidal oysters growing on rocky coastlines. But here, with our sandy, silty, muddy sediment, as much as the oysters are influenced by the geology, they also have a huge influence on the geology itself. And that wouldn't be the case in a rocky coastline. That's not having oysters on rocks isn't going to do anything. But having oysters in a muddy shoreline, like what would it look like without them? So to keep erosion from happening, it is really important to have those oysters in place. And without them, it's exacerbated for sure. And oysters are being used as living living shorelines, living breakwaters to control erosion rather than using riprap and seawalls and stuff. It's lower cost, and they also have the environmental component behind it too. So it's kind of a win-win.
Yeah. Every farmer has a great story. I'm sure you do as well. What's the funniest thing that's ever happened to you or to someone that you've seen while harvesting oysters?
Oh, man, that's a good one. I don't know. We've had several man overboards.
I can imagine.
Kevin came out to the farm, and
Kevin Joseph?
Yeah, he came out and jumped on a cage barefoot, just wasn't thinking about the barnacles and stuff that could be on there, and he found out really quickly that was a horrible idea. He was all cut up. That was pretty crazy, but he took it like a champ. He was like, oh.
You said you do this, like year round, like, hey, you harvest oysters in the summer, but you also harvest oysters in the winter, so when the water gets cold, I mean, there's got to be some shrinkage going on. Like, how do you... Do you wear wetsuits? What do you do in the wintertime?
Yes.
How cold does the water temperature get?
It can get into the 40s.
Jeez, man.
It hasn't happened in a couple of years, but it can get pretty damn cold.
Do you wear dry suits or do you wear wetsuits?
No, wetsuits.
Okay.
And this air drying once a week, that's more of a summertime thing to control the hard growth, like barnacles and oysters. And after the water temperature cools down, those stop landing on your gear, and then you're having the soft growth. That's algae, tunicates, all that stuff. You don't have to dry it as much, but definitely still have to dry it.
So you have a wife and 2 kids, daughter and a son. Do they ever get in on the action? Are they out there flipping cages with you? Or?
Not so much. George has been coming here. My son, he's been coming around the shop and helping us sort. I have a little backpack. I've been bringing him a couple days a week.
And how old's George?
He's 1.
And he's sorting. You have a 1-year-old sorting oysters. I love it.
Yeah.
He's into it?
Oh, he's into it. Yeah, he likes to crank the boat and all that stuff.
That's very cool.
My daughter's she's into some other stuff.
Okay. Not into oyster farming as
Not
much.
yet.
Not yet.
I'm not forcing it,
Okay.
She wants to be on the beach more than on the boat.
If you could shuck an oyster with anyone, dead or alive, who would it be?
Oh, man. Bill Murray.
Bill Murray.
Yeah.
He lives around here.
I know.
You got to get him out to the farm.
He's my favorite. I love Bill.
Really?
Yeah. Where the buffalo roam. Oh, man.
Okay, that's fair. This is the Retired Southern podcast, so I have to ask, what's your go-to oyster and drink pairing? What are you drinking when you're having oysters? Is it a beer, wine, cocktail? What is it? Water?
Usually beer.
Okay, what's your beer of choice?
Shoot. These days, I've been drinking a lot of Red Stripes lately. I know
Red Stripes.
I know it's not the pairing of the year, but yeah, I've been on a Red Stripe kick lately. I did a coral reef ecology class in Jamaica in college.
Very cool.
Spent some time there and got hooked on the Red Stripes.
Okay.
Yeah, I like pairing them with wine, and normally I'm just slurping them out here and don't have a drink. I'm normally eating them on the farm.
Yeah.
Vince Shots and Vince Lendecki, he does some amazing oyster beverage combos. You should definitely look him up. He's another mad scientist when it comes to oysters.
Okay. No, I'll have to check that out. Honest question, have you ever gotten tired of eating oysters?
Yeah, sometimes? Whenever, because especially at an oyster roast, when there's still a bunch of oysters on the table, I don't want them to go to waste, so I take it upon myself to just
clear the board. Yeah, no, I get that. So if someone listening right now wants to experience the Charleston Oyster Farm firsthand, what's the best way for them to book a tour and check out the operation?
So we have a link on our website, but it takes you straight to Charleston Outdoor Adventures page. They're based out of Bowen's Island. They do the kayak tours and eco tours. We operate the farm tour with them as well. So they do the booking. There's office staff pretty much all the time. So booking's pretty easy. We do tours, public tours twice a week, and we also have private tours available too. They're great staff, great people, great location. You can go eat our oysters afterwards at Bowen's Island or anything other fare you want as well. And yeah, it's seamless experience. That's the freshest place to get the oysters too.
Right. Yeah, so I did the tour with Dan. I was out there with Dan and Captain Tripp, and I'm just going to give you, listeners, just some great advice. If you take the tour, you might want to bring a 6-pack of your favorite beer with you, because you will have the opportunity to sit down. They'll pull some oysters out of the cages, and you can, literally eat oysters right out of the water. Dan even brings his special mignonette, and we had and some hot sauce. We had a pretty damn good time.
Yeah,
out there.
It doesn't get any fresher than that.
It does not. They're absolutely delicious.
Well, I wish I could take the credit for that, but that is all Mother Nature.
Every guest of the Retire Southern podcast gets an official trucker hat. So there are 3 different trucker hats.
I've been eyeing those things.
There is they call this one the classic navy and khaki. There's the campfire green and black, and there's the coastal, which is the light blue and white. Which character would you like to take today?
Shoot, I've been eyeing these things, and they're all so good looking. It's a really tough decision.
It's a tough choice.
It is a tough choice.
It's the Ferrari of trucker hats.
Oh my God. I'm going to have to go with the green.
He's going with the green and black.
I'm going with the green.
It's the most popular.
Is it?
The ladies love it, so do the men.
Oh, yeah.
Goes with everything.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. No, I appreciate it, man.
Wear it with pride, James. I wish I had some gear for you, man. I need to order.
But don't worry, I'm going to put your oysters in my stomach later today, and that's all the thanks I need. So I'll just close it out with this. Tom, thanks so much for letting us peek behind the curtain of Charleston Oyster Farm. You're helping people experience the authentic South, one oyster at a time. And thank you all for listening to Retire Southern. You can find this episode and more on our website, retiresouthern.com. Follow us on social media at Retire Southern, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And until next time, remember, don't wait for retirement to start living. Tom, I think I'm going to get a head start on you and beat you to some of the restaurants you're going to today so I can get a belly full. All right, man?
All right. Sounds good, James. I might see you there.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.